this is where I think tapping into tools like astrocartography, numerology, astrology, feng shui, these things really help because it's not everything's mind over matter.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
I think the spiritual world that we live in loves to empower people for good reasons, free will, free will, free will.
Yeah.
But the reality is not everything's free will. Like you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose what country. So a lot of what I do is helping people take an inventory of what I call energetic systems that they sit in currently.
Well, welcome to the Dream Your Life podcast. Hey, June, I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm very happy to be here.
Me too. Okay, so I love to start with gratitude to kind of just raise the vibe. I would love to hear from you 3 things that you are grateful for this morning.
Well, I'm very grateful to be able to meet a lovely podcaster who's also in the spiritual space because not often do I meet people in the flesh within my field. So very honored to be here. The second thing is it's kind of funny about my cat. She was very sad to see me leave this morning. She doesn't like being away from me, and I just really appreciate her energy and her support.
Is this the same cat that has been like with you for years and years and years?
Since New York, yeah. 7 years now.
This is because you have your cat in a lot of your videos.
I do.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason why I'm extra appreciative is because my life is so in flux all the time. There's so many changes, and she's like the one constant.
Oh.
Mostly against her will, I feel like, because I'm the one that's like schlepping her around.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful for her support and her energy.
Oh.
And the third thing is I recently moved. I've been in California for about a year, but I recently manifested a new home that I've been like dreaming of in Hermosa Beach. So I'm like, finally, because I was homeless for like 6 weeks.
Were you just trying to figure out where or?
Yeah, I just pulled the trigger and moved to Manhattan Beach. I got an Airbnb and I was like, oh, I'll find a place in no time.
Oh.
No, there was like nothing.
Oh, wow.
So I was like searching and waiting and searching and waiting. And finally, and of course, I'm very nitpicky with my real estate numerology. Like, I want this unit.
Oh my God. Yeah. I want to ask you about that, but that's so funny. So if the numbers aren't right, are you just like, this house is perfect?
Yep.
The numbers are not going to work with me.
Oh yeah. I passed upon so many homes.
Oh my God.
And I think I was driving people around me nuts. They were like, just pick a place. Beggars can't be choosers. You should be happy to just have found a place and just move in. Like, no, because I moved around a lot growing up. So I, at this point, have so much data around like how a house number affects me that I'm like, I just can't repeat that one thing. And so, yeah, it all aligned and I finally found a place.
You found your place. How close to the ocean are you?
Like 5 minutes.
Oh my
I can see the ocean from the house. So I was like, if I'm going to move to a beach, I want to see the beach.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially in California. Like, I'm paying this much, I'm going to at least see the beach. Okay. Well, I actually really do want to ask you about the numerology of real estate. But can we start? Hey, June, can you share, I guess, summarize what it is you do and who you serve? Because there are so many things that I have learned from you or heard from you. And I told you before we recorded, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to reel it in to stay focused because there's so many things I want to ask you about that I have no understanding around. So I know you do a lot of things, but how would you summarize like what it is that you do now and who you serve?
That's a great question. I'm still figuring out the answer to that myself. So it's completely fair and valid. I would say my primary demographic or target audience are people that are pretty successful and have gotten pretty far in life. And then they realize, wait, this is not what I wanted. And they're scratching their head thinking like, why am I not happy? Why am I successful on paper, but still feeling like I'm so empty inside? And it may sound like a midlife crisis thing, but this happens at any age.
Totally. It happened to me at 27. Yeah.
Right. Or people that are, have gone to really prestigious schools and they come out feeling like, wait, why did I go to this school? Why did I get this degree? Yeah. And why do I now suddenly want to throw away everything and do something different? So I think we all experience that in different areas of our lives at different points in our lives. I certainly have many times. So a lot of what I share with my clients and my students is really the tools that I've learned to figure out my own life stuff and pivot and repivot and repivot. And the reason why I don't directly put myself in the manifestation category is because I think that is like people who find me already are on that journey. They
Yeah.
have already discovered manifestation and they want to take it a step further.
Yeah. So what, and we're gonna explore and talk about some of these tools. Maybe we just start with how you got here, because it's not like you went to school to do this. What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah. No, my background's so different
Yeah.
from just like you, like a total life change. So I studied business in undergrad. I worked in Wall Street for many years
In New York.
in New York.
Yeah.
I started out in the sell side and then I moved to the buy side. So going from a bank to a hedge fund. Then I moved to a tech company. Throughout all those years, I was very miserable. So I studied screenwriting, filmmaking. Like I actually took classes at NYU,
Mm.
SVA.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was studying tarot from Frank Andrews. He's like a godfather of tarot in New York City. He was the reader to people like John Lennon and Andy Warhol and
Wow.
discovered Perry Ellis, like very famous. But the reason why I found him and the reason why I started studying tarot is because actually a lot of filmmakers read tarot. A lot of screenwriters read tarot.
Like read their own tarot
Read
or
their own
go get
tarot.
readings?
Read their own tarot
Oh.
because they're trying to develop characters in a screenplay. And a
Oh.
lot of them use that to break through writer's block.
Oh, so you didn't even approach it from like a spiritual, metaphysical perspective. It was like more for content ideas?
It
Or
was all of the above at
oh,
once. So I always knew I was intuitive, but definitely not to the degree of like a medium. I mean, that's also a very different skill set.
what do you mean by you always knew you were intuitive?
Like when I was working at a hedge fund, I kind of knew who would call me that day.
Oh, yeah.
So I would start preparing my analysis. I just would have a hunch, like, because in that space, timing is everything.
Yeah.
If a client calls you and says, like, I need this, it's like,
You need it then.
you need
Right
it.
then. 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was not the brightest analyst. Like, I had a lot of peers that, went to like Harvard Business School. Like, I wasn't a Harvard Business School student, but I did really well just because I always knew who was going to
Mm.
call and what somebody wanted. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just kind of thought it was like, oh, like luck. But in hindsight, now I can call it that intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that going for me. But you're right, to your point, the tarot really came in for content purposes because I wanted to become a screenwriter. I was like, I'm done with Wall Street. I'm done with this whole analytical stuff. I want to go to Hollywood. Like I had that like not 6 months, but I had that really intense like couple of year pursuit of that where the tarot naturally kind of came in. And when I started reading tarot for screenplays, coincidentally, people start to be like, hey, this like random reading you gave me came true. And that really snowballed
Mm.
to a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Okay, so who were you giving readings to? Just like friends and like
My coworkers.
coworkers.
Yeah. And that was crazy because I had a lot of male coworkers who were like, this is not real. And they did it just to humor me
Yeah.
and to humor themselves, only to find out that a lot of the predictions were coming true, especially business stuff, money stuff.
Yeah.
And
What year was this?
this was all the way from 2015 to 2018, 19. This went on for years.
Yeah.
And
were you doing it for yourself too?
yes and no, I did it for the screenplays.
Yeah.
I don't know that people can actually read for themselves.
Okay.
I don't think you can.
Because you already have this preconceived, or like you want something to show
Yeah.
up, and that affects the
Yeah.
Wow. So what can you just share? And I read the Forbes article that was like 2020, I think, but where you would predict like you're going to get a raise, but not at this company, and like a few months later.
Mhm.
Was it that kind of thing, or like what else are you pulling in these like readings?
Yeah, so the circle that I ran in was like a very ambitious circle. So a lot of them now are like very successful founders, exited companies. I just happened to be in the right crowd. Therefore, I was able to collect a lot of data around business and finance. Other areas of life, such as, relationships or love, that really came in later. That wasn't until TikTok and internet took over. But all the readings prior to that was mostly business. It's so interesting. Like it's interesting to me that tarot and intuitive readings are more associated with like love stuff
Yeah.
because I didn't even really know that world existed.
Yeah. Well, I always thought the tarot, and I could be totally wrong, but the cards themselves feel more feminine in nature.
Right. I just happen to take them and interpret them in a more
Okay.
numerical, data-driven way.
Okay.
Also, the person who trained me, Frank, he had his own like secret sauce ways of reading cards
Okay.
that I've definitely like incorporated.
And when you were doing your readings, how much of it is like you're reading the card, and then how much of it is picking up on the person's energy and maybe their spirit guides or like stuff around them? Like I'd love to hear your approach to this.
Great question. I definitely think it's both because the cards are just a starting point.
Yeah.
At some point, I just kind of start to trail off and start talking, and I don't know where the information is coming from, but I just share it. And, it's usually in the form of like, well, sometimes I get images, and that's like the clairvoyance. So, for example, I'll ask things like, "Did you go scuba diving recently? Because I see you like floating in water in like a gear, not like in a scary
And
way."
you're just seeing it in your mind's eye, kind of
Yeah,
like,
it feels a little bit like when a movie scene kind of like
yeah,
when you think back to, oh yeah, that movie and a scene
yeah,
pops in.
yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Oh,
So it's a hybrid. Oftentimes though, the way it manifests is like you just start talking. Yeah, and you don't know why you're sharing it. You're just I just feel compelled to tell this to you, and
wow.
they're like, "Oh my gosh, that thing like happened this morning." Or when somebody just walks in the door, this is when I used to live in New York. When somebody
Yeah.
walks in the door, I'd be like, "Oh, are you going to California? I just saw a map of California." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm going next week."
Does
So
this happen all the time to you? Just like with every,
it happens pretty frequently. It happens especially when that person's open.
do you pick up anything from me when we first met?
Well, I picked up the fact that well, a couple of different things, but I
Mm,
picked up this like openness.
mm.
So I think you're kind of like they show me a transition and an openness, like a vast field that you're walking into,
Oh,
but
wow.
still trying to shake off like these like old like habits and patterns and belief
Mm,
systems,
mm-hmm.
but not like life stuff. It felt more like corporate type
Mm.
habits that you were trying to release before you like throw yourself into this big open field. And I actually
Oh,
didn't know that you had this corporate background. I
oh,
kind of
wow.
knew that you had a nine to
Yeah.
five, but
Oh, wow.
not these
Oh,
big tech
that's
companies.
cool.
So kind of like trying
Okay.
to shake off like these like, old rules
Yeah.
or very like buttoned up ways of doing
Yeah.
things.
Like, take off this jacket.
Love the
Okay.
jacket though.
Sorry, we got a little derailed. This is fascinating. So, okay. So the plan is to move to LA and get into the film business, but you're still doing like on Wall Street working at this point and doing tarot readings for your coworkers. It's all like happening. Then what's next? Did you move to LA to pursue film?
I never ended up pursuing film. I wrote
Oh,
screenplays that got into like film festivals,
oh,
and that
that's
was really
cool.
cool. But I kind of stopped pursuing that once I discovered like, oh, this industry is shifting and dying.
Mhm.
And this is before the pandemic, and I
Mm.
felt that. And
Mm.
people were telling me that too. So I guess what ended up happening is I just went viral, like in
Oh, because you were
2020.
posting things
Yeah, I was posting things, not expecting anyone to see it
on TikTok or
on
on
TikTok.
TikTok. Oh, okay.
I thought it was my little safe haven of like, oh, no one's gonna find me, and I can like talk about whatever I want.
Wow.
And
So
next thing,
this wasn't really a manifestation in terms of like it wasn't like you had a vision to be some influencer or anything.
no,
This was
this
all
was the universe being like, here, go do this, like forcing, like putting it right in front of my
wow.
face. Yeah. So I definitely think there are moments when you're just called to step up
Yeah.
before you can even like visualize it for yourself
Yeah. Okay, so what can you talk about a little bit also what you were sharing?
on TikTok.
Yeah. Did it start with just tarot and then moved into other areas?
So it I was talking about all the things.
Mm.
Tarot, how to clean your house energetically, uh how to find your purpose. It was all the, that same level of randomness still carries to this day. But the very first video that went viral was like me like coughing because I was trying to sage a house, and then I like inhaled my own smoke.
Oh my God, of course.
And I was like uncontrollably coughing, and that went
And
viral.
you
It was
decide to post that though.
Yeah. And that's the thing that went viral, and that was even tarot. So I always tell people like there's no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
You just gotta post whatever inspires in the moment.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you, but because you are so immersed in this work of energy and metaphysics, like I actually, this might seem like a kind of a random tangential question, but with videos that go viral, like, is there an energy to that video? Like it doesn't seem like it would just be random.
Oh my gosh, that's a great question because there's definitely energy to it. And in fact, if I set the intention for something to go viral, it does. That takes a lot of discipline though, and that's the hard part. It takes so much energy and discipline to be like, okay, like I want this to go viral and therefore, and you have to sit and tune in, okay, like universe, like what do I have to say in the video? Like what message? Because what you're trying to do is like catch the idea that will go viral.
Yeah.
Because there's ideas always like floating around
Yeah.
you, but if you just pay attention, you like the first thing that comes to mind, you got to turn that to content.
Yeah.
That I've never shared publicly,
Oh, that's cool.
but that's how I do it.
Wow. And do you think these, I guess it doesn't matter, but do you think these ideas are, it's like your higher self? Is it a spirit guide? Is it?
That's another great question. I think it's just all energy.
Yeah.
I try to stay away from like, things like higher self or twin flame or soulmate. I believe these things exist, but I don't really use that
Yeah.
language. I just kind of see it all as just like energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you go viral on TikTok.
Mhm.
At what point are you like, maybe I can make this my livelihood?
So I had set up a website back in 2018 just for shits and giggles, and I had like a 1 hour tarot reading.
Oh.
I was practicing how to make a website,
Mhm.
set it, forgot about it. When I went viral, I woke up and I had orders coming in. I hadn't linked that website anywhere to my social media. People were going out of their way to be like, how do I get a reading from this girl? Found my old website that I completely forgot about and getting orders against my will. So I
Oh
had
my
like,
God.
I was like, I don't want to give readings right now. Like, why is this being
Were they
booked?
actually like, was it connected to a calendar? Like, were they actually able? Oh,
No, they just had total faith and trust that I'll get back to them and fulfill these orders.
well, it must have been nice to wake up to a bunch of money coming in.
Yeah, and I had my huge, money blocks, limiting
Mm.
beliefs around that, like lack stuff. So when that started happening, I was like, oh, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. And that's a whole journey on its own too.
Wow. Okay. And so now, I mean, you've worked with CEOs, you have worked with all different types of entrepreneurs and leaders and teams. Can you share a little bit about how you got into that space, but also what is it that you're doing and how are you coaching these people, and like what are some of the tools this is probably a really big question, but maybe there's a way that you can kind of like share just the high level, like your approach.
Yeah. So it's evolved over time. But for example, if you're my client, I would ask you, like, hey, what's the most important thing in your life right now? And the secondary thing is, what's the biggest pattern you've been stuck in that you can't seem to break out of? So those are the two things I start with. Like, where do you want to go? But where do you feel like you're kind of like swiveling around endlessly?
Mm.
And this is where I think tapping into tools like astrocartography, numerology,
Yeah.
astrology, feng shui, these things really help because it's not everything's mind over matter.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
I think the spiritual world that we live in loves to empower people for good reasons, free will, free will, free will.
Yeah.
But the reality is not everything's free will. Like you didn't choose your parents, you didn't
Yeah.
choose what
Well,
country,
did
right?
yeah.
That's a very fair
Yeah.
that's a very fair
Yeah.
question. And you
Maybe
probably
you're
did.
in your brain that as you know it today didn't choose it, but
Right, you chose it, but you probably forgot.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
now you're like, what the hell? So a lot of what I do is helping people kind of like take an inventory of what I call energetic systems that they sit in currently. Like I looked up this address beforehand, I added numbers up. This is a 1,
This one?
the studio.
Oh.
Perfect for business,
Oh.
perfect for entrepreneurs.
Okay. So you add it. So what do you actually, can you explain what astrocartography is?
Yes, so we all have our own birth charts. Earth has its own birth chart. Like every city has its own birth chart. Like LA has its own personality, New York and Miami, yada, yada, yada. So we look at your chart versus the city's chart. And how will your life have played out if you're born in that city? That's astrocartography.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I discovered astrocartography because I knew I was in a certain pattern in New York that I couldn't seem to break out of, no matter what I did. That's the other thing. Like, you first have to try everything you can. Like, this is not a shortcut, right? Like, you first have to like pay your dues,
Yeah.
like self-development, do the
Yeah.
coaching, all that. Despite all that, like, I still was in this really oppressive pattern. And then I found out through astrocartography, I was living on Saturn on my ascendant. And that's like a big no-no. That just means like you have this giant weight on how you're perceived.
Yeah.
So you can't really be seen. Like, there's always gonna be people telling you, like, don't do this, don't do that,
Oh, wow.
don't go for this, and like very tough bosses,
Wow.
no matter how good you are. So that's astrocartography. Like, you can fix that by just moving out of New York, like just leaving your Saturn line.
What, and it doesn't matter like what building you're in New York or like the numbers of the actual unit.
That all factors in.
Oh, that's all part, because
That
could someone
yeah.
just like not, I mean, not be a good match for just a certain part of New York, but if they move like 2 blocks away or to a different
Yeah.
neighborhood?
There's definitely degrees.
Okay.
And so you could be living in a perfect, I mean, there's like hierarchies to these things. I
Yeah.
feel like it's kind of like, which how does a city have more power, or does a house have more power?
Mm.
Usually the city will have more power because
Oh,
it's like
got
a
it.
bigger
Okay.
place. So yeah, I've seen people, myself included, who live in like the perfect house number, but if the astrocartography's off, or if your personal transits are kind of like whack right now, yeah, I mean, the house number can't really flex its original strength.
Wow.
So yeah.
Are there any, so what can you share, so you add up all the numbers. So my address, the number of our house is 571. So I add that up,
Yep.
and then
So 571 is what, 13,
13,
which becomes a 4.
which becomes a 4.
So, and how long have you been living there?
5 years. It will be 5 years in July.
And what's your personal life path number? We could add up your birth date.
I think my personal life path number is 1.
It's a 1.
I think my birthday is September 26, 1985.
1985.
Yes.
First of all, 26, that's fantastic.
That's
You're
my favorite number too.
nice.
Oh.
26, 28, great with money.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and 26 adds to an 8. So, yeah, that I would say is pretty compatible with a 4, because 8 is, so you have 2 life path numbers, pardon me. You have your main 1, but then your birth date is also a secondary. So it's actually 1 and an 8. And you live in a 4, and 8 is a multiple of 4. So I think those are kind of compatible. But here's the thing with 4 and 8s, and maybe even little 1, you could feel kind of boxed in. Like, you could kind of feel like shutting the world out and really focusing on your family, your business, just that bubble. So it's important for people that live in a 4 or an 8 to, which I think you're actually doing right now through your podcast. So this is great, to kind of branch out more, connect more, socialize more, be more open-minded to new ways of living and thinking, because force can kind of get into like a set routine.
That resonates, but I always thought it was, I love our house. I love like my kids and my family that I like. I don't think I'm a homebody. I never used to think of myself as that, but I do, like my dream like day, night, weekend is like in the house with everyone. So I think part of the reasons I wanted to get a podcast studio was also because like I love my office, like I love my whole setup there. So I could see wanting to just stay in that little bubble, in that
Yeah.
box.
Yeah. I also tell people your life path number. So for example, I would not like a 4
Mm.
or a 1. I lived in a
Oh.
1, and 1 was great for me, but great for my business, not emotionally.
Mm.
But that's because I don't have your life path. I'm not a 1 and I'm not an 8.
Mm.
You said an 8, right?
My,
Oh, your secondary life path is an 8, 26th.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so because you have 1 and an 8, 4, 8, 1, these places work for you. They wouldn't work for me.
Oh, interesting.
So I know I talk a lot about, generically, like 1 means this, 2 means this, but you do also have to overlay your own life path number.
Yeah.
And that, on top of that, astrocartography. And then on top of that, you also have to look at just your personal transits. There's a lot going on.
How do you, like, I think this is so fascinating and interesting, and then this happens to me every time with spiritual, like anything, even astrology, or my skeptical mind comes in and wants to be like, really? Like, why? why does that matter? And is it truth? Like, or is it just someone making all this stuff up? Like how do we know? And
Yeah.
it just seems so like the energy in the moment that we're in that minute changes everything about who we are. And then the location, there's like it just seems so, I don't know, like crazy perfect, like almost like how do we know that this is truth? Like what about it because you obviously are very analytical and you have this corporate background and there's so much of this that feels like we can't prove it.
Yeah, astrocartography especially, it's only 50 years old. Astrology is like 5,000 years
Yeah.
old. So it's hard to find very good astrocartographers as it is. But for me, that's why I like to talk about my own experience a lot because I moved around a lot. Like growing up, my father, he's retired now, but he used to be a diplomat. So we moved every 3 years.
Gosh, my dad was too.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
crazy. Oh my God. We have to like talk
No,
about
I
that
know.
after this.
I know.
Because that's a whole
He was an appointed diplomat, but anyway, we'll talk about
Did
that
you have to
after.
move a lot too?
No, just we lived in Morocco for 5 years, but
That is
it was just
amazing.
yeah.
Oh my
Where
gosh.
did you live
I
all
get
over
so
the world?
excited because it's like a
Yeah,
very unique
yeah,
life
yeah.
to live a life. Well, I moved around like 3 times in Germany.
Oh, wow,
Hamburg, Regensburg, Berlin, and
wow,
then we lived in Guam, and then we lived in Singapore. Then we lived
wow,
in like pockets here and there in Korea. And I went to college and my parents continued to move around like Alaska,
wow.
Kazakhstan, like it was crazy.
What did they do?
My dad just represented Korea, and so he was an ambassador in various
Oh,
countries.
yeah, my dad's the ambassador, the U.S.
Nice.
ambassador to Morocco.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
so
to talk
cool.
about it.
I know, I know. Wow, so fascinating. Okay, so you moved around a lot, and then how did you?
So I was able to track, well, I didn't do it as a kid, but later on as an adult, I was able to compile like all the places I ever lived, look at all the astrocartographies and go, wait, this makes so much sense. Because I felt so different at different places. And also because I don't know if your audience, I think they would know this, but I'm also a reflector for
Oh my
human
gosh.
design.
Someone told me I had a human design person come into one of my groups and she was like explaining all the types. And then she explained reflector and she's like, if anyone here is reflector, I want your autograph because I've never met a reflector in my whole life.
Really? I mean, yeah, we are pretty rare.
Yeah.
But there's more and more reflectors that I think are incarnating right now. I think they're kind of like, it's our time. I don't know if that all reflectors are like all that spiritual.
Oh.
I've heard of some where I'm like Sandra Bullock is a reflector.
Oh.
I
Interesting.
think she's very content living her Hollywood life, and not thinking about all this stuff. So,
I'm a projector.
oh, I love it. So yeah,
Yeah.
projectors are so good at like really seeing the person and
Mm.
really spotting where there can be improvements and how things can be done efficiently. Really, really smart people, you know.
Oh, thank you.
So I love my mom was a projector. So yeah, so because I am a reflector, I'm also more sensitive to my environment.
Mm.
In fact, my entire being is almost like a function of my environment. So that's the only thing I can really go off of when I talk to people like, hey, this worked for me. This has been my experience.
Is reflector like everything's open for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're like projectors are also very conditioned because you only have one defined center, but we have no defined centers. So everything is conditioned. So it's very important for you as well, but for me to just be alone and really like ask myself like, are these my thoughts or is this someone
Mm.
else's?
Oh,
Do I
wow.
actually believe this stuff?
Are all reflectors empaths?
I think just by the virtue of the undefined stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and that's why you can feel people's energy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So okay, back to astrocartography. So you moved around a bunch and there were some places that felt right and some that just didn't, or like
Yeah.
what got you into astrocartography?
It was when literally bumping into certain patterns where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Oh.
Like it's just not working out. Like my life in Michigan where I went to college, phenomenal. Loved Michigan.
Oh, wow. That's
And
where my
then
husband's from. I love
really?
Michigan too.
And we're a Michigan half too, sort of, is around here.
Oh yeah, we are.
A lot of Michigan references
Oh
today.
wow.
So wait, you said you're from Michigan too?
No, no, I'm from
Just,
California, but
oh, but your
my
husband.
husband is, yeah.
Okay, love it. I loved Michigan, and then I moved to New York. Everything changes, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And then life in Michigan was very different from Guam and all this stuff. So if you, for example, like if you live on your like sun line and your sun is on your descendant, you're gonna manifest a husband or partner. If you live on sun IC, you're going to, same thing, you could manifest partners, but you will also have a lot of paternal figures in your life that are trying to help you out. So I happen to live at places where like these planets were
Oh my
exactly on some of
God.
these lines. So your literal life event, you can correlate to what lines you're living on. Like it's almost like you can call it coincidence, but if the effects are that immediate, like you move and it's like it unfolds like within a couple of months. And at that point, you can't really ignore it anymore,
Yeah.
you know? So we're not going off of feelings, we're going off of actual life events. So there's stories of people who live to a very perilous line and they actually do get very sick or go through a divorce or die. Like these things are, there's a lot of data around that actually.
How does, for the listener who's like, oh my God, I need to like look all this up and check on my address and stuff, how do you do that?
So you don't, I mean, if you want to invest in like a very professional astrocartographer, you can always do your research and see who's available.
Do you have any courses on this or
I do
any?
have a course on this. I have a very whittled down version, but only because I think it's actually like good enough to start to kind of
Yeah.
narrow down places. But I have a course around different areas of life and what planets you want on those areas of life to manifest that goal on that life, on that area of life, and also kind of working backwards to see, okay, what part of the world will that planet fall in that area of your life?
Wow.
So these are all, I mean, the actual tools are free, but
Yeah.
I do have a course on like, step by step how to
Could
explore
you just
that.
like chat GPT, here's my address and here's my birthday?
You could try that. I've
Yeah.
tried that. I think she's pretty good, but she makes like mistakes.
Okay.
So it's not perfect. I'm sure one day she'll be really good.
Yeah. Or she'll be ingrained in us and we'll
Right.
know.
Right. In her brain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Scary.
Wow. Okay. I want to touch on the human design piece because there is one thing that you have talked about a lot, which is human design for teams. Or
Yeah.
can you share a little bit? Because I think in one of your videos, you were talking about like, this is one of the secrets of billionaire. And this is something that maybe you don't do as a millionaire, but when you get to this level, these are the types of
Yeah.
tools that
Yeah.
can really amplify.
Right. So Penta is how your energy changes when there's three or more people. So my energy, independently, it is what it is. But as soon as I walk into this room, it may shift because there's two other people in this room. And that's because, so human design essentially is all just about like electricity and how it flows through our body. But people have like different circuits. So electricity might flow through like your money line, but not your love line, or your spiritual line, but not your creativity line. We all have like different
Wow.
wirings.
Wow.
But when like you're interacting, then you start exchanging that electricity. So it's almost like plugging into a different socket when you start interacting with someone. So, I've seen so many instances in teams and I've worked with, I don't want to mention who they are, but like there's a really like really big internet company that works with like Paris Hilton. They create viral products, and I've worked with them to like set up their team members correctly so that everyone can be in the right role, so to speak. And then I think like literally within a week they went like viral overnight. They were on like late night with Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, did a collab with Lil Nas X. Like it was crazy. So
Well, so is it things like, I mean, this is going to sound so basic and you're gonna be like, probably like,
no, no,
no,
no,
this
no,
is
no,
not
no.
what it is. But like, you're like, no, you should be marketing. You should be here. You guys should work together. You should be in a closet over there, like that type of thing. Or is it like,
That will be the ultimately the CEO's decision.
yeah,
But I do kind of tell them like this person's strength is this.
just by their human design type?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I mean, you also have to look at the gates and the channels. You do also overlay astrology. You got to look at both of these things.
God, but I mean, well, first of all, so much respect to that CEO that's like that connected and open.
Yeah, he was a risk taker.
How did he find you?
When I first blew up in New York, I had enough people around me that were like, you have to talk to my VC person
Oh,
who has
wow.
these startup
Oh,
founders.
wow.
And
Okay.
so it just kind of like spread. And he was just happened to be in that network.
So is this you going in and getting everyone's birthday and then like crunching numbers and like doing the stuff and then coming back and presenting on it? Or do you have to actually be in a room and get to know the people?
Just on the spot, same day. And obviously, I use my own intuition as well to kind of go and see like what are some like hidden archetypes that each person's operating from, because like we all wear a mask at the job, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like going behind that mask and be like, where is this coming from? Like, where is this behavior coming from? Like, why are you being driven this way?
So
And
you're coaching is it like hot seat coaching individually and then you're like, you put the whole puzzle together kind of
yeah,
thing? Oh my, that's so cool.
it seems messy at first, but we get there by the end of the day by looking at all these different tools and bridging it together. So yeah. Yeah.
That is so fascinating.
It's fun. It's fun when they're open to it.
Is
Um,
everyone usually open to it if it's like mandated by the CEO
if
or
it was mandated, they were open to it. They were like,
yeah.
fine. And they have fun along the way. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Wow. Okay. Okay, so Penta is one of the secrets. Can you share any other, I mean, because you've coached so many very successful individuals. What are some of the other tools and techniques and things that these highly successful people do that maybe the rest of us aren't privy to or aren't actually tapping into because we don't believe in it or something?
Yeah, so even before astrocartography, I noticed a lot of them look into the feng shui, and that's all about rearranging your homes depending on the energy of the year, the month, the day. In fact, I've had people who weren't spiritual at all, but for some reason discovered feng shui and just like intuitively was like, yes, I need that.
Yeah.
I have people who do that. I have people obviously who do a lot of like just coaching in general.
Yeah.
And somebody like, Tony Robbins, who like the predecessors of the coaching industry, they just didn't call them intuitive coaches, but I think that's what he really is,
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying like I think he's like the ultimate role model of a coach, but so when my clients hire somebody like Tony, what they're really getting is spiritual coaching.
Right.
So a lot of them believe in this stuff, believe in the fact that they can grow and change and they're not fixed, and that you can wake up tomorrow and be a complete different person. That's like
Mhm.
the very first thing that they all believe in. The second thing is I also feel like a lot of them focus on health, surprisingly.
Mm.
Because if you can't really have a spiritual mind if you don't have a spiritual body, they somehow
No.
all seem to believe this stuff. So I don't necessarily tap into that as well, but a lot of them are really into like wellness, like health, and like
Mhm.
biohacking is a big thing right now.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are, I'm sure there's other things I'm missing out on,
Yeah.
but it's usually feng shui,
And
astrocartography.
do you consult on feng shui in like an office setting or?
I do it as a function of astrocartography.
Okay.
So meaning if you can't move, how should we change your home so that embodies the energy of where you want to be?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But I don't do the whole like, because feng shui is like also very ancient art,
Yeah.
and there's a million ways to read it. So the modality that I pick is really based on like a timing of the different, there's this thing called the bagua, and the timing of the stars according to that bagua. But beyond that, I don't really go into it as much.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and you did a whole TED talk around this, is quantum entanglement, the effect of relationships,
Yeah.
and how this, and I would love to tie this into manifestation and this idea that, like if there's something that we really want, that we can move towards it, make it happen through our thoughts and focus. But when typically when someone thinks about manifestation, I think it's very much like
Yeah.
I do it, I do it,
Yeah.
I do it. We don't really think about how relationships
Yeah.
not only affect it, but completely can change anything
Yeah.
that shows up in your life. So I would love to hear a little bit about what you've spoken about in your TED talk, but also how this relates to manifestation.
Yeah, actually, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is something that, yeah, the billionaires really invest into their
Mm,
relationships. And relationships are a mirror to yourself. So they use relational coaching also to develop themselves. So I'm glad you brought that up because that is
mm,
actually a
mm.
huge aspect. So I think we talked about this before, but I see everything as energy.
Yeah, me too.
Everything is energy. So are people and relationships.
Yeah.
And going back to the whole Penta thing, certain people have abilities that you just don't, and vice versa. So if you want to literally quantum leap or unlock new realities or just even stumble across opportunities, people might have the keys to that.
Mhm.
Like I always ask somebody like, hey, you got this cool opportunity. Like, where did it come from? And if you like pull that thread, it usually comes from somebody.
Yeah.
It's a person. There's a name
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
So the key is to figure out, okay, what puzzle piece are you? How can you become self-aware to see where you add value so that when you meet the right person, you can be symbiotic and you're not just taking because they might open doors for you and that's how you manifest.
Yeah.
It's not a very sexy way of calling it like, manifestation through people, but that's exactly what it is. People are portals, just like how your home is a portal, city's a portal. So that's kind of how it plays into the whole manifestation piece. People as like portals, yeah.
I love that. And I 100% agree with that. And if I think of any big thing that I've manifested, the people were the how. It was never like, oh, I want to move here and I'm just going to do it by myself and just, but it's like
Right.
there was someone here that had the connection, someone here, and it's all
Absolutely.
those puzzle pieces. And it's the same with business opportunities. They don't just fall in your lap. Someone makes the connection or someone reaches out. And I think that that is such important advice when it comes to even just creating a life that's more fulfilling or a life that you love. It's not all on you.
Yeah.
And knocking on doors doesn't mean, like searching things online. It can mean just texting someone or giving them a call and seeing where
Right.
that leads.
Right. One of my favorite quotes is like, people don't do business with people that they respect or that they think are smart or that they think they can get something from. People do business with people that they actually like. And that's really, really true. It's like, yeah, I've met talented people. If I don't like you, I'm not going to work with you.
Totally.
Right. Like, so that very first step is to once again become self-aware enough to know like, okay, how do I come across? Where can I add value? So to your point, like, yeah, if you start thinking beyond yourself, then you will just attract
Yeah.
people who just want to be with you, help you, work with you. And it doesn't have to be like this like deep, long relationship. It
I
can be
know.
like a 2-month thing.
Totally. So, hey, June, I have a program for high school students that teaches manifestation a little bit, but it's how to land a job.
Oh, I
How to,
love that.
yeah. So it started. My business partner is a career coach. She actually works at Apple, but she created a course for high school students like that was all around how to land a job, and it's not what you're taught, which is it's not your resume and your cover letter and applying to a million places on LinkedIn. Chances are you apply on LinkedIn, that job is already filled. It's all about who you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
net your what does she say? Your network is your net worth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um and so we teach how to start building your network in high school when you don't have
Mm,
an ulterior motive, but
mm-hmm.
you can learn, you can start building mentorships. You can ask people, hey, how did you get to where you are? I would just love 10 minutes of your time. I'm in high school. I'm curious about. And then what happens is you're out of high school, you're looking for a job. You all of a sudden
Yep.
are at the top, your resume is at the top of the pile.
Right.
And for some reason, we're teaching it backwards. We're like,
Right.
perfect your resume, apply to a million different places, get in the black. I mean, I think Google gets like 50,000 resumes a day. Like,
Oh my
how could
gosh.
someone fresh out of college ever like
Get noticed.
get noticed?
Yeah.
It's through knowing someone.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm so glad you share that with me. And that, by the way, that's a really cool program
Mm.
because I have the secret theory that kids are bullies. But if they learn this stuff early on, they don't want to be bullies anymore because you never know how like the kid that you bullied in, when you were a kid might become a CEO one day. That was a wrong person to pick on, So I think that's like a really powerful program that you're
Yeah.
hosting and teaching. The funny thing about network too is, and I don't often talk about this, but even people who are powerful, like the billionaires and people that, went to like Stanford Business School or whatever,
Yeah.
they were smart enough to get there, but they were not likable enough to go beyond that.
Mm.
That happens all the time too.
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
there's nothing sadder than an isolated billionaire that nobody wants to play with because they're mean. And just because you're rich in one area of your life doesn't mean you're happy.
Yeah.
So it's a full circle thing where it's like you've got to develop yourself anyway to
Yeah.
to play well
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's opportunities in every category, not just money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, I mean, how much research is out there that it's It's not about the things or the money. It's about your relationships.
Yeah.
Those are the things on your deathbed that you're going to remember and you're going to care the most about or wish you invested more in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh, this has been so incredible. And again, there's so many other things that I could ask you about. We've come to the end of this time. I would love for you to share how people can connect with you, what you have going on. You have a bunch of courses about how people can work with you.
yes, so I used to work with people one-on-one, but I have paused that for like over a year now. So I have my school where people can like take different courses and whatnot and be in a live group coaching container with me. But I'm actually opening up a different kind of platform, which is also a school, but it's gamified.
Ooh,
So I forgot to talk about this, but one of the things that I teach is the dimensions because I believe we all live in different dimensions. So it's a platform where people can level up and move up in dimensions, and it's gamified.
like vibration.
Yeah, vibration, but in like a very pragmatic way. So it's like, for example, the fourth dimension is a dimension of like emotion. So if you join this platform and if you participate and interact with us, then you'll know how to master emotions if you reach that dimension 4. And then beyond that is dimension of intuition and so on and so forth. So that will be opening up soon. That
Who is it for? And then what's the ultimate transformation? Are you like just like a
Yeah.
light being at the end?
The ultimate transformation is to become like a master of your own reality.
Like a master manifester?
Master manifester, and also learning like, okay, I've been operating in like dimension 3 and now I know I have to move up. So it's almost like a self-awareness, like you become more self-aware. Yeah, I know
Oh,
that's kind of like
cool.
esoteric and woo-woo, but for example,
We're an esoteric and woo-woo podcast, so it's
right.
okay.
But for
Yeah.
example, like when I talk to you, I can tell that you're like in dimension at least 6, because dimension 3 is like the action taker, dimension 4 is someone who knows how to regulate their emotions. Dimension 5 is someone who follows their gut intuition and dreams bigger.
Mm.
Dimension 6 is someone who starts like really give back and start to
Oh,
understand like the karma and cause and effect of their own actions. Dimension 7 is where it gets a little bit weird because that's like parallel lives and whatnot.
is that
But
where's Oprah in this whole thing?
she's graduated. She's probably dimension 9
Yeah.
plus. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. How cool. What is that course called or school called?
It's literally called Phaedra School.
Phaedrus School.
Yeah.
What is Phaedrus?
So it's a book written by Plato. It's spelled differently. And there's a page in the book that describes how humans are actually angels that fell. And along the way, like we lost our wings. And we look up at the sky and we're like, wait, I feel like I remember like having wings. But that's kind of like
Oh,
the human
wow.
experience, right? We're like, wait, I feel
It
like I
is.
shouldn't be here, but I'm here. I feel like I'm a spirit. So,
Wow.
but then after I incorporated my company using this name, I discovered that that book got flagged for for like inappropriate stuff, and I was like,
Oh.
damn it. Anyway, people don't have to look at that, but that's the inspiration.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, any last parting words, anything that you want to share or advice that's coming through for you right now?
The only thing is, life is short, not to be cliche. Like, make the most of it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to lean into the new. Stop
Mm-hmm.
going back to the past.
Yeah.
So many people do that. And that's what actually creates like these anchors that just kind of like drag you down
Yeah.
energetically.
Yeah.
So look forward, not backward. That's my only 2 cents. And I definitely want to have you on my podcast as well
Thank
because
you.
I haven't not that I had too many episodes, but I haven't yet talked to a projector on my
Oh,
podcast.
okay.
And projectors like the ultimate coaches. I just discovered that Kris Jenner is a projector.
Oh.
That makes total sense. She coached her
Oh
entire
my God, that
team.
does make
She
sense.
she's like the master strategist,
And
right?
moving all the energies around to make it all
Yeah.
work. Oh, I love
She knew
it.
exactly what child should do what. It's like we need more projector coaches in the
Oh my
world.
God. Human design to me is so fascinating. I'm like definitely getting into it. And it's like when I meet someone, I feel like I know. I mean,
Mm.
if I know someone pretty well, I can tell.
I think projectors, it shows because they ask really good questions. That's like the first dead giveaway, and they're very efficient. The projectors are the first to be like, "Why are we doing it this way?" It's like, you're right.
Yeah.
You know?
We need, and like, I can't, I'm not a workhorse.
Yeah.
I need space and time, but like, I can be very efficient when I do
Yeah.
stuff.
So
Like,
you're right. There's clues.
yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
This has been
you.
amazing.
This was so much fun. Thanks for having me.